Every winter, across the southern United States, a strange rain falls from the sky. Thousands of birds suddenly drop from trees and hit the ground. They crash into walls, fall onto roads, rupture their livers, and die. They are not sick or poisoned. In reality, they are drunk. The culprit is a bright red berry. This fruit ferments right on the branch, turning sugar into alcohol. Birds eat too much of it and fall into a state of alcohol poisoning. But do you know the strangest part? The toxic tree that is disrupting entire ecosystems may be sitting right inside your kitchen spice jar. In the mid-1800s, American gardeners imported a shrub from South America. It grew vigorously, stayed green all year, and most importantly, produced clusters of bright red berries. People bought it and planted it around their yards. Nurseries sold it under names like Florida holly or Christmas berry. Everyone thought they had found the perfect ornamental plant for the holidays. No one knew that the very feature that made it beautiful was also what made it impossible to control. Each bright red cluster contains thousands of seeds. The Brazilian pepper tree grows extremely fast. While other plants need specific soil conditions and water levels, this species needs almost nothing. It roots in flooded wetlands, and it also grows on dry coastal sand. Poor soil, drought, or salinity, it survives them all. Today, Brazilian pepper has spread across and occupied more than 700,000 acres in Florida alone. It is also appearing at alarming speed in Texas, California, and Hawaii. Wherever it appears, it immediately creates a massive barrier. Its canopy interweaves into a dense wall, completely blocking sunlight and preventing pine, cypress, or native grass seeds underneath from ever having a chance to germinate. But blocking light is only the basic step. This plant has a direct defense mechanism underground. Its leaves and roots release chemical compounds that seep into the soil and damage the germination process of other plant species. It changes the chemical structure of the area, making the soil suppress growth for native plants even after the pepper trees have been cut down. However, strong survival ability alone cannot explain how an ornamental garden plant could cross hundreds of miles and take over remote wetlands. The answer is in the sky. In winter, millions of migratory birds, such as robins and waxwings, move south in large flocks. They constantly fly from place to place, searching for food, and the most visible, most abundant food in winter here is the fruit of the Brazilian pepper tree. The birds eat far more berries than they actually need. Millions of berries ferment under the sunlight, causing the birds to lose their sense of direction while flying. Every year, wildlife rescue centers receive waves of waxwings that have crashed into obstacles. But the birds that die are only a very small part of the story. Tens of thousands of birds survive that fermented meal and fly dozens of miles away. Wherever they land, they release intact seeds already wrapped in natural fertilizer. This plant does not need wind or water to carry its seeds far away. It provides an abundant food source to attract the widest-ranging bird flocks, turning them into a statewide biological dispersal system. Seeds fall into wetlands and grow into new shrubs. Those new shrubs then produce millions more berries, attracting even more bird flocks. This loop continues again and again, spreading at a speed humans cannot catch up with. You cannot stop an organism that spreads through the air by human labor alone. And things become even more complicated when humans try to approach this plant, because it shares one trait with some of the highest-risk plants in the world. If a plant grows aggressively, spreads quickly, and produces berries, the common question is, can we harvest and use it? The truth is that many people already eat it every day. The red berries of the Brazilian pepper tree and its close relatives are dried and packaged on expensive spice shelves under the name pink peppercorns. Those beautiful pink grains mixed inside pepper grinders in kitchens are exactly that. But behind that spice jar is a truth full of hidden risks. Brazilian pepper belongs to the same plant family as poison oak, poison ivy, mango, and cashew. The shared trait of this plant family is that their sap contains compounds that can cause serious irritation. Ecosystem cleanup workers who directly touch the leaves or bark often develop red, itchy, blistering skin rashes. For people with sensitive bodies, simply brushing against the leaves while walking past can be enough to cause lasting skin damage. Everything becomes extremely dangerous when people use fire to remove them. Smoke from burning Brazilian pepper carries irritating chemical particles directly into the respiratory system and eyes. This smoke can cause severe airway inflammation and has sent many workers and nearby residents to emergency medical treatment. In short, we have a tree that intoxicates birds, has sap that can blister skin, and produces smoke that can damage breathing. Yet somehow, its berries sit proudly in your kitchen. Even so, the US government is not spending its time banning spice jars, because the real threat from this organism is aimed directly at the survival water supply of millions of people. In Florida, there is a massive wetland system called the Everglades. This place is not only habitat for alligators and the endangered Florida panther, it is also a giant freshwater filter that provides drinking water for more than 8 million people. This ecosystem works through a shallow, slow-moving sheet of water flowing across sawgrass marshes. But when Brazilian pepper appeared, that structure was completely disrupted. It absorbed enormous amounts of water, drying out low-lying areas. It grew into dense strips that blocked the natural flow. The habitat of native animals such as gopher tortoises and Florida panthers shrank severely because they could not move or hunt through these thorny walls. To save the wetlands, authorities used part of a $2 billion restoration project to send work crews to control the spread of Brazilian pepper. Every day, they take motorboats deep into the marshes, carrying saws and chemicals. But cutting the trunks and spraying herbicide is still not the hardest part. What truly traps experts is the way this tree recovers aggressively after being cut down. The waist-deep mud of the Everglades makes it impossible for bulldozers or heavy machinery to enter. Humans have to work by hand in waters filled with alligators. And when you use a saw to cut through the base of a Brazilian pepper tree, it does not simply die. The tree responds to the disturbance by activating a massive underground root network. Within only a few weeks, dozens of new shoots immediately rise from a single cut trunk, turning one isolated stem into a much larger and more spreading thicket. The only solution is to use plant-suppressing chemicals. However, you cannot spray from aircraft over a wide area because that would damage all the native plants around it and contaminate the water supply of millions of people. Instead, workers must cut each stem by hand, then apply chemicals directly onto the cut surface of every stump. It is manual, expensive, and endless work. Cleanup crews can clear a few acres per day, while birds above them spread millions of seeds across the state in only a few hours. This is a classic failure scenario that has already happened in South Africa and Australia, when humans tried to use physical cutting methods against invasive trees. Costs rise too quickly, while the area occupied by the invader does not shrink. To control a plant that can clone itself quickly, spread widely, and resist mechanical cutting methods, humans need a solution that can search for targets on its own and operate continuously day and night. But applying this solution carries a risk that could create a disaster even worse than Brazilian pepper itself. After 70 years, scientists finally dared to use it. The idea of using one organism to control another is not new, but it comes with enormous risks. History has recorded many cases where humans introduced animals into an environment to eliminate pests, only for that organism to turn against crops and become a new threat. The US government never wanted to repeat Australia's famous cane toad disaster. In the 1930s, Australia released thousands of imported toads to kill beetles that were eating sugarcane. But the toads ignored the beetles. They multiplied into hundreds of millions, wiped out small native animals, and turned Australia into one of the most disastrous failed biological experiments in history. So the requirement for scientists was extremely strict. They had to find an insect from South America that liked eating Brazilian pepper, but at the same time, that insect had to prefer starvation over consuming any other plant species. The search began in the 1950s. Biologists tested dozens of different insect species. Most failed because their feeding range was too broad. Recently, attention focused on a tiny thrips species, smaller than a grain of rice, originally from Brazil. This thrips was brought into strict quarantine facilities of the United States Department of Agriculture. For nearly 20 years, researchers placed it in environments containing hundreds of important American plant species. From agricultural crops and native pine trees, to species related to Brazilian pepper, such as mango, the result was clear: this thrips rejected every other food source. It only consumed the young shoots and soft stems of Brazilian pepper. When it attacks, the thrips destroys the plant's growth tissue, causing the tree to become stunted, stop producing new leaves, and most importantly, significantly reduce flowers and fruit. Fewer berries mean fewer seeds, and the seed spreading system carried by birds is cut off. By 2019, after completing every strict test, the government approved releasing this thrips into the natural environment. Since then, more than 2.5 million thrips have been bred and released at hundreds of different locations. Most recently, a second insect, a leaf-galling psyllid, was also approved as an additional tool to suppress Brazilian pepper through a different mechanism. Do not misunderstand this. Scientists do not expect thrips to completely wipe Brazilian pepper out of America. Their main goal is to force this organism to slow down, stripping away its ability to reproduce uncontrollably. Only when Brazilian pepper weakens will native plants have enough light and space to rise again and reclaim their territory. The arrival of Brazilian pepper is a perfect example of the dark side of globalization. Just because humans wanted a bright red plant for photos and Christmas decorations, they accidentally opened the door for an invader that destroys land, distorts water systems, and uses wildlife as a tool for expansion. This billion-dollar control effort is still continuing every day. Workers are still entering the wetlands. Thrips are still being bred and quietly chewing through millions of young shoots. Waxwings are still flying south in search of food. Looking more broadly, this is a problem most major countries are now facing. In Europe and the United Kingdom, Japanese knotweed is also damaging infrastructure. In Australia, prickly pear cactus once swallowed millions of hectares of farmland before it was successfully controlled by an imported moth. The common point in all these disasters is human carelessness in moving organisms away from their native homes. One decision to buy an ornamental plant in the 19th century has now become a billion-dollar debt for future generations. The fight against Brazilian pepper in Florida may be one of the largest biological control campaigns of our time. Of course, a miracle will not happen overnight. It may take another 10 to 15 years before satellite images confirm whether this thorny wall is finally retreating. But with successful precedents from other countries, America has reason to place hope in nature. And now, the strongest weapon it needs is patience.